All right, everyone. Welcome to the Fit Geek Show. And today we have a very special guest. Actually, two guests I can see. Uh,
Mhm.
we have Lyle McDonald all the way. What's his name?
Norman.
Norman, yes. Lyle McDonald and Norman all the way from Texas. And Lyle has
Yeah.
been one individual in the field of exercise science and nutrition and fitness that I have looked up to from a very long time. The first time I saw his interview was with Juma Iraqi, so in Iraqi
Mhm.
podcast.
Yes.
Yes, and that's the
Yes.
time I came to know that a person like you exists in the industry, and then I started following you. Uh, Before that, I was in the States, and I had never heard of you or Brad Schoenfeld or any person
Sure.
belonging to this industry. So thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've done
Yep.
extensive work in this field from the past more than 2 decades.
Yeah,
And
it's about 25 years.
oh yeah, for sure. And whether it's exercise physiology, sport nutrition, or nutrition in general, women's health, women's
Yeah.
fitness, you do all the great work. And just to name a
Thank
few
you.
books that you've written, the women's book is one of the top books that you've written. The ketogenic
Yes.
diet book, the stubborn fat solution. These are just a few to name, and the rest of the books are available on bodyrecomposition.com.
Correct. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about fat loss in females.
Yes.
I feel is one of the most complicated topics that I have ever come across, and that's why I got an expert like you to talk about. So Lyle,
You're not wrong.
oh yes,
Go
yes,
ahead.
go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the book I wrote, the women's book, was over 3 years of exhaustive work or exhausting work, because comparatively speaking, men are simple. I mean, it's just true. The issues and considerations that apply to women simply will never come up for men. And in the big picture, men have it much, because a lot of men have asked me like, oh, when are you going to write the men's book? I'm like, I don't have to. There's already 1,000 of them out there. Like, in the big picture, it's much, much, much more simple. So.
So Lyle, let's begin with the first question that I had. How is female physiology different from that of men when it comes to losing fat?
Well, so in one sense, it's not, in the sense that the principles will always apply, right? We have to create a long-term calorie deficit, so that the body mobilizes stored fuel. So in that sense, it's not at a basic level, but there are differences, and there's a tremendous number of them, and I'll try to keep from getting too far into the details. But one of the biggest overall differences between women and men is hormones, right? At puberty, when men hit puberty, testosterone levels go up, and they're pretty much constant, right? They change a little bit through the day and the week and the month and the year, but it's whereas women, once they start their menstrual cycle and start having a period, they have this roughly 4-week cycle where two different hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are moving in very complicated overlapping ways. And this is impacting everything from mood, behavior, appetite, cravings, fuel utilization. And by fuel, I mean whether she's burning more carbohydrates or fat for energy, her propensity to store fats. So like there's all these very complicated issues. In the big picture, in a very real way, women's bodies are more, they're better suited, well, to basically not only storing calories as fat, but also mobilizing them with greater difficulty, right? Women's bodies spare carbohydrate and spare fat. And this is very much because, in a very real way, women had to keep the human race alive, right? Once a male has done what he needs to do as far as impregnation, like, yes, is it fantastic if he's around to provide resources and food? Absolutely. But is he required? Not really. Women are tasked with pregnancy, 9 months, which takes a sufficient number of calories, ensuring the child survives till 5 years old. So women's bodies very much evolved to survive things like famine and starvation. And men are much more likely to die. And in one sense, that makes logical sense, because as I mentioned, once men have kind of done what they need to do
Mm-hmm.
reproductively, if there's limited food, if there's limited resources, it's probably better if he dies sooner, because that will leave more food for her and for the baby. Like, I know that it sounds very callous, but just in sort of a biological sense. So
Right.
the consequence of that is, and there's still more to come,
Mm-hmm.
in response to calorie deficits, in response to, because a diet is really just starvation
Mm-hmm.
on a longer term, right? To your body. Your body doesn't care, how you look or what your body fat, it wants to keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
So dieting is just starvational, and a lot of the same adaptations occur.
Mm-hmm.
So women's bodies tend to show a greater adaptation to dieting, a faster adaptation to dieting, differences in the way these hormones change, and also how our body responds to it. So that is one reason women tend to have more difficulty losing fat compared to men, even if you give them the identical approach. So that's in really the long term.
Mm-hmm.
In the shorter term, women's bodies use nutrients differently.
Hmm.
So as an example, when women do aerobic exercise, cardiovascular exercise,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to use more fat for fuel. Wow, that should be a great thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, you don't use a lot of fat for fuel during exercise, unless you do a lot of it.
Hmm.
But number two, they tend to use more of the fat stored in their muscle rather than the fat stored underneath the skin. It's called subcutaneous fat. But the other consequence is that for the rest of the day, they burn more carbohydrate. Now, men, when they do aerobic exercise, even at the same difficulty level, use more carbohydrates during exercise, but burn more fat the rest of the day. And in the big picture, really what we do during that hour of exercise, 30 minutes of exercise, is not really the most important part. It's what happened. The other 23 hours of the day are far more important. So you've got sort of all these, then again, as I mentioned, in the second half of the menstrual cycle after ovulation, women tend to have cravings. Their appetite tends to go up. This can make adherence to a diet more difficult. You find that one thing women often suffer is reproductive dysfunction when they're dieting. And there's a whole lot that goes into that. And again, I don't want to get tremendously into the details, but it sort of fundamentally has to do with when a woman is eating too few calories for their activity level. The body sort of knows, again, this is hormonal, how much energy it has available, right? And if it has enough, it can keep everything running just fine. Right now, on any given day, certain things have to happen to keep us alive. Brain has to function, heart has to keep pumping, lungs, liver, kidneys. Big picture, like many people who diet very extremely, their hair will stop growing, or their fingernails will stop growing. Because why would the body waste energy on that?
Correct.
It's not required to keep you alive. And reproductive dysfunction, same thing. A woman's reproductive system may shut down. She may lose her menstrual cycle completely. Some things can happen. And again, if you think about it, if there's not enough food, that's not a good time to get pregnant. Women can also lose bone density. And these are things that only when men diet to the very extremes do they really experience this. Like in sports, like long distance runners who are very, very skinny, in horse racing, which I actually don't know if in the the jockeys, the riders maintain these extremely low body weights, like just, so low for their height. You will see that, but most men, they can diet very hard, they can diet to the extremes, and will probably never really experience this, where many women will. So these are sort of all considerations that do play a role in all of this.
Wow. So everything sort of goes with their reproductive health and evolution and how the mankind can move forward. Everything is related to that, essentially.
Yeah. One of the probably 10 or 15 years ago, very early kind of, and this happens in other animals too, right? Women, the females of the species invariably adapt much harder and much faster because they have to, and you see really other fascinating examples of this. Once a woman has had her child, even if she's not eating enough, even if she's, under really extreme, her body will still find a way to make milk. Right? Her women's whole sort of physiology to a very great degree. And again, don't I don't want anyone listening to this to mishear me.
Hmm.
I'm absolutely not saying that like women's only role is for reproduction. Trust me, I'm not. It's more that because of the importance of women in survival of children, her body has adapted, and that's great, but it can make the fat loss process much more difficult.
So that comes to the next question, gets me to the next question. So a cookie cutter approach, does it work for everyone? So like, does one diet, one routine work for all women? Is there a particular one that you've come across?
So yes and no. So again, in the most general sense, to me, a proper fat loss diet has to accomplish two things. Is one, it has to create a long-term calorie deficit. And by that, I mean the difference between energy expenditure, how many calories you burn, and how much you're eating. Right? That difference is ultimately what will cause the body to have to mobilize stored fuel, lose fat, or weight in the long term. It needs to have sufficient dietary protein. This is important for a number of reasons. Appetite control, blood sugar control. As important as anything, it's to prevent the loss of muscle. When that occurs, that can cause greater increases in appetite, a greater risk of rebounding to a higher body fat percentage. It also, if you're losing muscle, let's be realistic. Most of us diet to lose fat to look better, right? We can all lie and say it's because I want to be healthier. I'm not saying can't be the case, but let's face it, we want to look better. So if you're losing muscle along with the body fat in some proportion, many people, women and men, find that, okay, their weight is down, but they're not really happy with the appearance changes that they made. They're sort of a smaller version of themselves. So those are really the two global factors. And honestly, women who get those two things right, and we'll talk about exercise later, that's the third part of that triangle, are really ahead of the game. And to a degree, the rest of it, how many dietary carbohydrates, how much dietary fat, is far less important. That depends on things such as how much activity you're doing. Food preferences is a big issue. And here's something that I think you mentioned. We've got a mutual friend named Sumi Singh. She's an athlete that I train, but she is Indian. She can probably comment on some of this better than I can, because I know this is one of, there are huge cultural differences. And I'll be very honest that for the early part of my career, it didn't even occur to me, because I'm an American, and if y'all know anything, Americans are about the most mentally isolated. Like, to us, America is the world. And I used to often forget that American culture completely different from anywhere else in the world. But also that the things that I have access to at the grocery store in terms of foods often don't exist anywhere else in the world. And it took me, it wasn't until I got a little bit older in my career and that it occurred to me, it's like, wow, that I was really missing. And something I've talked about in my Facebook group, that I'm not going to be the one to do it, but it's becoming more clear that a lot of the diet and exercise advice, it tends to be done on a fairly small ethnic group in terms of ethnicity and culture. And it tends to be realistically sort of middle class white women. And it's now becoming very, very clear that there are biological differences between different ethnicities. There are huge cultural differences in terms of the types of activities, images, body image attraction. One sort of a random example that came up is at least in the American Black community, hair is extremely important. It's just a big part of their culture. And so they will get weaves, which is they weave, often real hair, actually. And my understanding is actually a lot of it comes from India. It's like that's sort of its own industry.
Yes.
Is basically, I watch a documentary and like mind blowing to me, because I didn't know any of this. It's fascinating to me. But because of that, many Black women won't swim because weaves can cost $2,000. This is not an inexpensive part of their culture, but that alone may be impacting, so giving generic exercise advice, so someone needs to really sit down and write an ethnically oriented approach, just to start looking at some of these factors. I think, and one of the things we'll talk about, Sumi has written about, there are differences in like Indian, just genetically,
Yes.
in terms of things that impact Indians. And again, I'm sorry, anybody listening to this, like I realize that like India is a huge country.
Yes.
It is like, so I know there's ethnically diverse parts of it. I'm just going to fall back on the fact that I'm a dumb American, and I'm not trying to be insulting. I just generally don't know. It is just purely out of ignorance.
No, that's
but anyway,
fine.
Yeah, I just don't want to, I live in the US where people are super sensitive too, so I don't want to come across wrong to anybody. So again, as long as you get those two right, the rest of it less of an issue. And there are food preference issues, there are food availability issues. But to a first approximation, and I was saying this years ago, and this is what really the research has found, is that really the best diet is the one that you'll stick to in the long term. So in one sense, yes, it's cookie cutter in that you need to have, a deficit and enough protein. But beyond that, I tend to not care too much about the rest, as long as it allows you to stay within your calories, adhere to the diet in both the short and the long term, should be, because there are, and I think we'll talk about this in your next question, so many dietary approaches, all of which say that this is the best. And every one of them works well for some people, terribly for other people, and kind of in the middle. If there were a single best diet, we would know what it is by now. So it really is more working within the context of the individual. Again, if I'm working with someone that is an athlete, is extremely high activity level, I will probably have different recommendations than someone who is relatively inactive, doing maybe only brisk walking, at the lower intensity. I would probably give different possible ideals, but beyond that, no, not really.
Oh, that was interesting. And to add to your conversation, what you just said, when I first came to the US, I entered Walmart, and I just had to buy a deodorant, and I just look, and there are like 200 options, and I was asking my uncle, which one should I buy? And he's like, just take anything, it's okay. You'll get used to it.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. When I've had people come visit from Australia or wherever, and you take them to Walmart or just the grocery store, and they just stand in the aisles. They're like, why do you need 50 types of the same salad dressing? I go, because it's America, and we do. Because I spent some time in the UK many, many years ago, and you go to UK, and this was kind of, I think, this was really the eye opener. The stuff, all the low-fat foods, the fat-free foods, everything I can get so easily. Like, wow, this doesn't exist in a lot of other. It's changed now. I know other countries are, because America, we will ruin the rest of the world, no matter what. We're determined to bring all of our terrible things to the rest of the world. Some of which is good, and they have one type of salad dressing, one type of bread, and I'm there, and like I realize that that's all you need, but having grown up in America my whole life, it made me anxious, because I can go to Walmart at 3:00 in the morning and get salad dressing if I need to. Now, am I going to? Absolutely not. I've never had a salad dressing emergency that I can really remember. But being in the UK where the stores closed at 8, knowing that I couldn't go get salad dressing at 3 a.m. really bothered me. And I know this sounds ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. It really made me aware of like what an ugly American I am in many, many, altogether too many ways. Because it is, I've just gotten used to this. But yeah, or they'll go to our cereal aisle. That's the one that blows people's minds, because most countries have 2 types of cereal, and they're both awful. And in America, we've got so many. I've known people from Australia. They don't buy blue jeans. They don't buy electronics. They take home sugary cereal, right? They take home Lucky Charms and Captain Crunch, because they can get blue jeans where they live. It's truly mind-boggling. And like I said, so I tend to forget this. Again, this is something that both in general and just in terms of specifically Indian culture, Sumi would be the person to talk to about this.
Yes.
Because has addressed it within her own diet, even though I think she grew up in the Philippines, so it wasn't quite the same, but she's much more familiar with it than I ever will be in terms of like traditional diets, and can work within that probably better than I can. So I'll speak in some generalities, and that's all.
So this brings me to our next one question: that have you come across any interesting or strange fat loss diets for women that clearly you saw and you knew they wouldn't work, or any exercise routines?
Well, probably more exercise. Like for dietary stuff, I mean, I can't think of anything that's been like a specific female fat loss diet, except like maybe what I've written about. But I would say women are exposed to some of the most appalling diet advice that's out there. And I think a lot of that is, culturally, women traditionally have been far more likely to diet than men. At any given date, the percentage of women, again, this is probably American statistics, but I'm sure it's generally true. Some astounding percentage of women are dieting. Whereas for men, it's always been less of an issue. It's becoming more so in the modern era. Again, same media. Younger males are saying, oh yeah, I want to be buff with a six-pack and this and that and the other. But at the same time, men's dieting advice tends to come from a different place. Men just, you want to get in shape, lift weights and eat protein. Like that's how guys get into shape. That's what you tell them. Women, the amount of just staggeringly bad diet advice. One of my favorite stories, I told this on a recent podcast, again, to give you an example of this. There is a famous Barbie doll, right? I'm still never sure what of my cultural stuff, because it's just a very popular girls doll.
Yeah.
Been around for decades. And there was a 1960s Barbie doll, and it came with a scale, and it had a little toy book, and it said how to lose weight. You flipped it over and it said, don't eat. Now this didn't, they pulled it off the mark, but this is frequently the type of advice. Oh, if you want to lose weight as a woman, eat as little as you can, live on salad, my mom used to tell me stories, that women, it's like you would get some plain green lettuce and put cottage cheese, which is this weird curdy dairy food I detest it. And that's just how you diet it. And whenever I go to the grocery store, we have these endless women's magazines. And I can't not read them, because the cover is always like the new thyroid hack that you can lose, 25 kilos in 3 weeks. And I'm like, I gotta know this. Maybe this is the secret I've been missing. Maybe this is and I mainly do it just because I think it's funny, but it's not funny. It bothers me. It makes me very angry. And mainly I do it, I think, to get my blood pressure up, because I like being angry, but because we have just staggering failure rates for dieting across the board. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but I'm of the opinion that so much of it is just due to terrible dieting advice. And it is more, women are exposed to far more of it, to myth and lore and so I don't think there's any specific diet I can think of, but there is absolutely terrible. Now there are a lot of women specific training ideas you'll come across, I think, more so. And some of this there is a logic to, right? Women's body shape are different than men, obviously, right? And again, this changes at puberty. Little boys and little girls, fairly similar. Puberty is where it changes. Puberty, men's testosterone goes up, they gain muscle, they lose fat, they get broader shoulders. Men typically don't get they have narrower hips than women, generally don't carry a lot of body fat in the thighs. Women, it's kind of the reverse. As soon as they hit puberty, they tend to gain body fat, breasts develop, they will gain hip and thigh fat, which is specifically to support pregnancy, and tend to be, they call it an apple shape for men, right? You're kind of round around the middle, and a pear shape for women where you're narrow. So you will see exercise stuff that is aimed at body shape training. It's like, oh, okay, if you're particularly hippie, if you're particularly, thick through the lower body, it will be things like try to increase your upper body size to balance things out, right? Because if you tell that woman, and I've run into this, so if you have a woman that's usually carrying a lot of excess body weight and body fat, they tend to have very thick thighs. It's just the nature of it. So then we're like, oh, well, I'm a guy, I'm going to put them on a heavy leg press or heavy squats. Well, then their leg muscles get bigger, and it almost makes it work, right? It's sort of pushing everything out. Maybe that's the wrong approach in that specific case. Now, so there's some logic to that. Probably the most traditional approach, and again, this is very old school, is, there's a couple things. One, first off, there are bulking exercises, squats, bench press, deadlift, then there's toning exercises, lunges, flies, tricep kickbacks. And that's not, and it's because men did these to get big. Well, those are bulking, and then women typically did these. And there's really nothing to that, right? All muscle tone is, or all being toned is, it's having a little bit of muscle mass and not carrying too much body fat, right? Basically, muscle grows or gets smaller, have more or less fat. That's really all that can happen. Which isn't to say that some exercises may not be more suited for women. And by that, in the sense that women typically carry more muscle mass in their lower body. And if you compare to their upper body, and also compared to men, like if you compare relative strength levels, women's upper bodies, 50 to 60%. Women's lower bodies, maybe 70 to 80%. Right? Men are just a little bit more balanced, strength and muscle wise. But what that means is that for many exercises that men can do, so for example, a squat where you hold a bar on your shoulders, women's upper bodies may not have the strength to hold physically or comfortably what their legs can move. Right. So, in the recent years, there's been, the hip thrust. That is like the exercise for, and is it a magic exercise? No. However, for women, it takes the bar off their back. It takes the core. Can full squats build your butt muscles? Absolutely. Not everyone can do them well. Not everyone can do them with good coordination. Women's wider hips, their knees tend to come in more, which can be dangerous. There's biomechanics to it. Have them do a hip thrust. Suddenly you've taken all of this out of the picture, and it allows them to target to work the target muscle, in this case the glutes, much more effectively. So in that sense, there may be, I hate to say women specific exercises, but some that just, watch women do deadlifts, for example. They may have a much greater difficulty keeping their upper back from rounding, just because their lower body is so much stronger. Whereas if you put them, in more, take that component out of it, put them on a leg press machine where they don't have to carry, or whatever it is, you avoid a lot of those problems. But beyond all that, the bulking and toning, you still have this idea floating around that women should just train with light weights and higher repetitions. And because, if you lift too heavy, you'll get bulky and all that kind of thing. This has been around, well, for decades. Right? If you actually go back into the history of women in sport, and I'm talking the early 20th century. The first Olympic Games, I want to say 1896, there were 0 women. 0. By the 50s, it's like 25 or 30%. And most of that was because Russia and Germany wanted female athletes because they could win more medals. Now we're at about 45% women at the Olympic Games. It's about half and half. But during that early 20th century, there was this belief, women are too fragile to do sport. Sport will make women into men. That's been around for like almost a century now. There was a physician, and it's always male physicians, make no mistake, who basically said, if women engage in intense sport, that their reproductive organs would wither away, and they would basically finish their transformation into a man. And that sort of continued to this day, even the 80s and the 70s. It'll make women infertile. Of course, there's also, and this is very cultural. If you get too muscular, you'll never get a man. And this is very, that's very generational, right? Like my grandmother certainly would have thought like that. My mother wasn't really part of her cultural upbringing. Right? Women just weren't allowed to do these things. Even in America, it wasn't until the late 70s, and due to some legal stuff, that it really changed here. And now we're sort of at the point, due to social media, which has done some really bad things and done some really good things. We're getting past a lot of that, because the big issue, and again, I'm going to be very careful in my words because America is nuts about all this stuff, right? There's this, if women lift heavy weights, they'll get bulky and lose their femininity.
Oh, that's in India as well. Yeah.
Right. And again, the reason I'm being is over here, it's a big political, social justice, and I don't want to get involved in that. Everybody knows what I mean.
Right.
And a lot of that, because in the 80s, the females you saw with muscles, female bodybuilders, were all on steroids. They were all taking male hormones, right? If you take the average untrained female and have her start weight training, within 6 months, she might gain 2 to 2.5 kilos of muscle, right? That's about, now the women they're seeing in the magazines back then, those women were 85 kilos of solid muscle, right? We're talking, they were huge. They're bigger than a lot of males you will see who lift weights because they're taking so many drugs. So this idea that women will get bulky, will, lose their femininity, still persists. But because of social media, you see a lot of women who are, unbelievably strong, stronger than many men, who are training with incredible intensity. Again, I know these are loaded words, people know what I mean, but, are still feminine in that, are they muscular? Are they toned? Absolutely. But are they, no. Again, you still see it. When women take lots of anabolic steroids, it can change their facial structure. Sure. It can, but this is when you're talking about severe drug abuse. Take the average one. So yes, you still get this idea that a woman should only train with light weights, do high repetitions. There is a famous celebrity trainer in the US who's, I don't remember her name, and even did, I wouldn't say it. She has said that women should never lift more than 1.5 kilos or they'll get bulky. Now, for any women listening to this, when you had a child, the child already was born weighing more than that, right? Again, I think in pounds, but like average birth weight, what, 3.5 kilos, somewhere in that?
So it's a little weird in India. When a child is born, we measure it in pounds, but otherwise everything is in kilos. Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Huh?
So I was about 7 pounds.
Today I learned it's about 3 kilos. Yeah, today I learned something new. So like already, a woman who is simply carrying her child is lifting more than this. Right. So there's just so many nonsensical ideas and I've seen women, right, who sort of followed that trainer and never got anywhere. They never get any results. And then they had a kid and they were carrying, it seems like most mothers carry the child in sort of one arm. And so they were starting at 7 pounds, 3, and it was just going up from there. And they would go online and go, you know what? The arm that I carry my baby in is looking a lot better, right? Because you're actually challenging the muscles. So there's still a lot of that out there. Now, don't hear me saying that, you have to be capable of, squatting 200 kilos, 150 kilos to get in shape. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But sort of the third factor, I talked about diet and fat loss. It's very common to hear about women, they do endless cardio. 1 or 2 hours a day, usually at low intensities. They're not getting enough, and they'll spend years doing this and just get nowhere. And then they'll decide they want to get into weight, or they might be doing weight training and just lifting very light weights. Then when they see something, they go, I want to work a little bit harder. They start challenging themselves. Frequently, they'll increase their protein intake because that's very much part of the lifting culture. And in a few months, they'll see more changes than they saw in 2 years. It's a magic transformation. But by that, I'm not saying you have to do maximum sets of 5 or maximum sets of 3. Not everyone is physically built to do that. And again, women, if you've got wider hips, not going to be a good fit for you if you don't have the shoulder. But even women who decide, okay, I'm going to do 15 repetitions, but I want the last 2 to 3 to be challenging, to really, doesn't have to be all out, but I want it to be, hard. And over time, I'm going to try to get a little bit stronger. That's when the magic happens. And if you do that, plus a deficit, plus getting enough protein, again, if you get those 3 in place, the rest of it is, is really negotiable. So in the exercise realm, certainly there's a lot of, whereas men, you don't see this. I have yet to meet or train a male who didn't want to lift as heavy as they could that is just how guys think. And guys love to eat all the again, very, very American centric.
Yeah.
I realize, and I know we're going to talk about this
Yeah.
As far as Indian culture and dietary patterns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, men love to just, like, when men want to get in shape, like, go lift weights and eat nothing but protein. When women want to get in shape, traditionally, go do all the cardio you can stand, eat nothing but carbs,
Mm-hmm.
eat as little as you can, and it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So in a very real sense, you know, women, when their goal is to lose fat and, you know, tone up or get in shape, whatever you want to call it, should take ideas from what men traditionally do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No, it's different. Like, so if you look at, you know, in the physique sports, and this, I think, a lot of what's changed things. If you look within the physique, and by that I mean bodybuilding, fitness, figure, those types of activities, that
Mm-hmm.
the women in those activities are already, like, if you talk to them, they're like, yeah, they lift heavily. Again, that can mean sets of 8, sets 15, doesn't matter. You know, they tend to over consume protein, if anything, overemphasize it, and they diet, and, like, those are the strategies that work. It's not that they're exclusive to men so much as they're generally good strategies. Women just have these other considerations, like we talked about. Men can diet at much more to the extremes and just not see the problems. And women often have to kind of coax fat loss rather than forcing it. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So thanks so much for that detailed answer. I too have come across some weird diets. Number one being just soups and salads for days and days, and
Yeah.
the person drops weight, and once they drop the weight, they start eating more because they've been restricted for so long, and then they end up gaining more weight. Another
Absolutely.
thing, a fitness routine that I came across was a just time under tension routine, which the trainer just makes you do 1 or 2 reps of each set, but they just make you do it for like 10 to 15 seconds, say example eccentric, and 10 to 15 seconds concentric. And yes.
Yeah, well, that comes out of something that very US from years ago called super slow training.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy, Fred, I forget his name,
Mm-hmm.
who came up with that. And his science, his physics, he has a very poor understanding of physics, but the idea was like that would reduce joint loading and injury. And yes, you take 10 or 15 seconds either way. The problem with that, like, it can be very useful for, like, older individuals, people with joint injuries, because it's decreasing, you know, the physical loading on the joints. But it's generally doesn't have quite the same effect, you know. And the idea is also that the whole time under tension, the idea here is that how long the set is kind of determines how the muscles adapt. You know, so if you do 8 repetitions and you do 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down, that's 32 seconds. Or you do, you know, 2 repetitions that are 15 seconds each, and it doesn't really work out that way. But that's, that tends to be a very niche type of thing. They're very much a tiny subculture of the weight training world. So.
And I don't think even the volume or volume loads can be equated like that.
Yeah, to a degree, but, like, what you see happening is that when you slow things down so much, it decreases the intensity, the amount of weight you can use, far out of proportion to the length, like to the set. So a lot of it, because a lot of those guys will be like, oh yeah, if you train like this, you don't need to do a warm-up set. And that's true, because it is a warm-up set. It ends up being at such a low percentage of your maximum strength that it's not really accomplishing, I think, as much. Now there has been some interest recently in low load training and what's called blood flow restriction. So for history, back in the day, like, again, when I was sort of coming up, the idea is, okay, for muscle growth, 6 to 12 heavy repetitions. Somewhere in that range. That was like the sort of the zone you worked in. Some would go a little bit higher. Occasionally you'd see 5s, but somewhere in that range. And that was, and then by recently, maybe the last 10 years, they've started doing some research. They're like, okay, so we're going to start at, say, 30% of maximum, right? So if you could lift 50 kilos, you know, heavy weights might be 80% of that, which is 40 kilos. 30% would be 17-ish, thereabouts. But you do that for like 30 to 35 repetitions. till you cannot do another repetition, to what's called muscular failures. You physically can't lift the weight anymore. And it does turn out that that generates very similar results for a bunch of boring reasons I'm not going to get into. Blood flow restriction is similar. Here you use a cuff, a stretchy, that you tie off like around the upper arm or the upper leg, and it physically blocks blood flow into the muscles. And that just has a very similar effect. I'll just put it that way. It's much more painful. It's because like you get a lot more of a burn. It's much more difficult. Those also tend to be really good if you've got joint problems, injuries. So, you know, back to years ago, I injured my low back. It was like 20 years ago. And when I went back to training, I had to really decrease, you know, the overall forces. And I did it, was it 10 seconds, 5 seconds down, 10 seconds up or something like that. But I was physically working around an injury. I found that if I pulled any faster than that, it hurt my low back. That was a very specific application. So the low load training, you know, you can go lighter, but it's still, the key here is not necessarily the load, but the challenge. Is if you're going to lift at 30% of your max with very light weights, you have to go till you physically cannot do another full repetition. It's very painful. I think it's very boring, but I've always done, you know, I've always been kind of a heavy, I like pushing heavy weights. I was never great at it, but I always enjoyed it. But it's really more about challenging the muscles and also challenging it over time. Something else I do see, I dare say more among women than men. Men do this sometimes too. Like I said, men always want to lift more weight. They do it because they think it impresses women. The thing is, women don't care. All it's impressing is other men. It's just the truth. Like, yes, I'm sure. I mean, yes, there are women out there that are just like, but on average, the only people they're impressing in the gym are the guys watching them bench. The guys always want to lift more weight. Women frequently, either because they have been sort of taught, if I lift heavy weights, if I do this, I'll get big and bulky, et cetera, or for whatever reason, a weight that's challenging now. So maybe they're doing arm curls with 5 kilos in each hand, and they'll, 13, 14, 15, but they'll never go any heavier than that. Suddenly 15 is very easy, but they just stay at that weight and then they stop progressing. So not only does it need to be challenging acutely on like an individual workout basis to some degree, and again, I'm not saying you have to go all out at every workout, but just in general, over time, it has to progress. Now there are multiple ways to progress. If you're doing one hard set, you could do a second hard set. If, you know, over time you need to add weight, how much weight you're lifting. Now, here a very specific, women specific issue comes up. Women on average are not as strong as men. It's just, it's biological. They have less muscle. Just, that's all I'm saying. In the weight room, frequently the jumps between weights proportionally are much higher for women, right? So on average, like if you're using a barbell to do squats or bench press or something, like generally the smallest weight increase, total weight increase is 2.5 kilos. Although I'm told in some countries it's even worse than that. Right, in the US, 2.5 pounds per side, which is a kilo and a quarter. So about 2.5 kilos. Now, if you're a male who's bench pressing 100 kilos, that 2.5 kilos is nothing. Right? That's 2.5% of what you're lifting. If you're a female who's bench pressing 25 kilos, that's 10%. Huge, right? You wouldn't take that male and add 10 kilos to the bar because he wouldn't be able to do it.
Correct.
Dumbbells are frequently worse, right? Dumbbells, again, I think in pounds, you know, in the US we'll get 3 pounds, 1.5 kilos, 5, just under 2.5 kilos. You might have 8, so you might have about a 3.5 kilo weight. Then it goes to 10, 4.5 kilos. You might have a 12 if you're lucky, about 5.5. And then it's 15, then it's 2.5 kilo jumps per hand. That jump from 15 pounds, roughly 7.5 kilos in, more like 7, to 20 to 9 kilos is huge. Women may go from, I can do 10 repetitions with this to, I can't do any. So in that case, just saying add weight may not be realistic. So in the short term, number of things women may have to do, right? So let's say the goal is 8 repetitions. Well, state so you can do 15. If you can do 15, you up the weight, maybe you can get 5 or 6 repetitions. You might, if you're lucky, you might get 8. You might have to build up to more. You might have to add extra sets in the short term. So go from 1 set to 2 sets. So like, let's say 1 set at a given weight for 15 is hard. You add a second set, you only get 12, right? It's because you're tired.
Right.
When you can do 2 easy sets of 15, you've gotten much stronger. Because first it used to be 1 hard set of 15, 2 easy sets of 15. You can probably go up on at least the first set, right? So like, let's say you're lifting 10 kilos, again, just because the math is easier in my head. And the next jump is 12.5 kilos. That's the next dumbbell you have. So you're doing 10 kilos, 15 is hard. Add a set, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I can do both sets of 15 pretty easily. So take that first set that was at 10 kilos, go to 12.5. Maybe you only get 6 or 7. Well, on the second set, go back to 10 kilos. So you can get more repetitions then. And then in a couple of weeks, that first set at 12.5 kilos, maybe you get 8, 9, 10. Eventually, when that gets to 15, maybe you do 12.5 kilos for both sets. So it may be, women may have, depending on the exercise, may have to use a slower, just as a function of how much they're lifting relative to what weight increase they have available to them.
Awesome. That was quite detailed. So next question is, who qualifies to diet for fat loss? Because there might be women who are actually overweight according to the scale or visually, and they really need to lose fat. But there are other women who are not really overweight or really visually do not need to lose any more fat. So who qualifies and who doesn't, and what kind of qualifiers would you think apply?
Yeah. So it's really interesting that statistically, again, at least in the US, a huge proportion of the women who are dieting, frequently more, I believe a larger percentage, are women who are of relatively normal weight. Now, that's a very kind of, normal is a very loaded term, and there's all kinds of equations about how much you should weigh based on how tall you are, and a lot of it's very old, and I'd say a lot of it's very outdated, because scale weight by itself is not useless, as some people say, but it's not all that matters. Right? So take two women and say one is 50 kilos at 30% body fat, right? So 1/3. Take another woman who's 50 kilos at 20% body fat. They weigh the same, but they may look completely different because the one will have 10% less fat and 10% more muscle. So the scale in and of itself, and unfortunately, many still tend to think like that. I knew someone years ago, and she was very tall. She's like 5'10". She weighed about 75 kilos. She wanted to weigh 60 kilos. And I was like, why? Because somehow that became a proper women's weight. I have no idea. I don't know where this number came from. I mean, I guess if you're bench pressing, it's the bar and 2 20-kilo plates. Like, I don't know where. But I told him, like, you're 5'10". We would have to cut off one of your legs to get you to, like, physically, there's no human way you could lose 15 kilos on that frame. So from determining like who should or shouldn't, using body fat percentage would be a better approach, because even, and this is something else that goes back to like a lot of the ideas that women are exposed to, is again, they're thinking in terms of weight. Oh, well, if you, and they'll put it in these terms. They'll come to you as a trainee or as a coach or trainer, and they'll go, well, I weigh 60 kilos now and I want to weigh 50. And you go, why? They go, well, because I just think that'd be a good number. But why? That, I'm not being dismissive, but like, that's not an actual reason. Where did this number come from other than thin air? Or because they saw that someone they look, or whatever it is, weighed that much, right? So body fat, and what women may see, especially in the early stages, is as they're losing some fat, if they're gaining small amounts of muscle, for a little while, the scale may not move. And of course, women, I'm dieting and my weight's not dropping, don't care. You're changing the relative That doesn't happen forever. Again, women may gain 2 to 2.5 kilos over the first 6 months. Assuming they're dieting properly, they should lose significantly more fat than that. Over that 5-month span, even at a relatively small 1 kilo per month, they should lose 5 kilos of fat. Their body weight should still be down, 5 kilos of fat loss, say 2 kilos of muscle gain. They should still be down 3 kilos. But more importantly, they'll look, their appearance will improve much more than if they just lost the 5 kilos, or if those 5 kilos included, a kilo of muscle mass. They'll look much better. So women do need to be aware of that as well. But, women can be too lean. And this gets into the menstrual cycle dysfunction. It's not exactly body fat percentage. Again, don't want to get into the details of all this. It gets very, very complicated very, very quickly. But it's not necessarily healthy for a woman to remain, 14 to 15% body fat year round. And to put this in perspective, so the lower limit of women's body fat is about 10 to 12%. So women, if you go look at like fitness competitions or physique competitions or bodybuilding, at competition, that's what 10% body fat, like basically you have lost basically all the fat you have to lose. Hips, thighs, butt, usually breasts disappear. So women, be aware of that. That is a very potential reality. Many high-level athletes may, depending on the sport, they may hold 16 to 18% year-round. And for a woman at 16%, she will usually have visible abdominals. She probably won't have completely lean hips and thighs. It depends on how body, but as a generality, when you get to 20 to 22%, you will, that's women's average is like between 18 and 25%. So it's considered a very average body fat percentage. And assuming that you have some muscle mass, you will look generally fit and toned. Once you probably get in the 25 to 30% range, you will probably would be what we would describe over as like curvy. And, and as body fat percentage goes up, you're obviously getting, to carry, but because consider that a woman at 100 kilos who is carrying 50% body fat, and that's not unheard of. That means 50 kilos, she's carrying 50 kilos. That is a large amount of body fat. So, if a woman is 18 to 20%, I probably wouldn't, unless she has a specific goal. If she comes to me and goes, I want to do a physique contest, or I want to be a runner or a cyclist, and being leaner will help my performance. Sure. That's a very small, in my experience, it's a very small percentage of the dieting population, the hardcore athlete. There is an appearance issue. 18, if you're between 18 and 24, that's a good healthy range. If you're training, you'll probably be, once you get above that, you start to see decreases, more health problems. You also start to see issues with fertility. And for women who desire to become pregnant, that can become its own concern. So above that point, that 25, that 30% range, may want to do it for health reasons. Again, we all say it's for health. We're all lying. When you get older, you start to care about health, maybe in your 60s or 70s. But if you're younger, let's just face it, you want to look better, which is perfectly fine. So yeah, from a body weight standpoint, it's hard to say. I tend to consider body fat percentage a far more useful metric. Because again, if you've got a woman and she's 65 kilos but carrying 18% body fat, she will probably look very different. She'll look very different than a woman at 50 kilos carrying 30% body fat, or whatever the number works out to.
So Lyle, we have a few questions left, but it's, I think, almost time for you to end it.
I'm fine. We can keep going. I got
okay. That's great. All right. So
no, I'm good. I always run long.
Okay. So the next question would be, how can females begin a fat loss diet or an exercise program? And how can they frame the workout plan or the nutrition plan if somebody's doing it by themselves?
Sure. Actually, hang on. Before we get to that, I do want to go back and touch on something that is very ethnically specific. one thing that is starting, so one of the metrics that has often been used and is sort of very problematic, it's called BMI. It's the body mass index.
Yeah.
It's what is it, height squared divided by weight, or height
Yeah.
divided by weight squared. Doesn't really matter. It is a very rough measurement of anything. But it does tend to correlate with body fat percentage. But what is rapidly being found is that the relationship between BMI and body fat percentage is different in ethnic whites, ethnic blacks, and ethnic Indians. Indians tend to carry a higher body fat percentage for any BMI value. So if you took 3 women of, white, black, Indian of same BMI, the Indian woman would carry a higher body fat percentage. And there's like, I recently tried to read a paper, and it was about the genetics of this, but all it was talking about hardcore genetic, like stuff that I can't. It's just like, well, we did this, we found that this gene was 25% more likely, and I'm like, I don't care. I want to know the consequences of this. And one thing I know, Sumi put up a paper on this role, and I send these to her because I know she has, a larger Indian following, just because of course that would just be logical. And for whatever evolutionary, genetic, cultural reasons, Indians are more prone to being insulin resistant, which means that the hormone insulin doesn't work as well. Higher risk of becoming diabetic, developing the metabolic syndrome. And this is probably all related, but at the same body weight, at the same BMI level, Indians are more likely to be what we would call skinny fat, which means that they are a low body weight, but at not a high, like you can't be very light and have a super high body, like you couldn't be 50 kilos and have 50% body fat. That'd be physically impossible. But proportionally, you might be, 60 kilos, and whereas, an ethnically white woman might be 20% body fat, you might be 30. So the same body weight, same BMI, because the same height, but so in that case, so there may be a sense that, again, this kind of points out why body weight is a problem. So at the same body weight, Indian women may carry more body fat, and it is, again, there's health risks down the road, but that may make it more likely for them to want to seek fat loss. And again, fat loss is better than weight loss, but to a degree, they're always going to be related, right? No woman without using drugs is going to be able to lose 5 kilos of fat and gain 5 kilos of muscle in a reasonable time frame, like over 2 or 3 years maybe. But 10 kilos of muscle gain for a woman, that's a lifetime goal, right? That is a tremendous amount of muscle. Whereas she may be able to lose 5 kilos of fat or even more. So in that sense, body weight will probably always go down, but it's a matter of degrees. If you lose 5 kilos of fat, gain 2.5 kilos of muscle, you're still 2.5 kilos. It won't be exact. But so in that sense, weight and body fat percentage will be related. They're just not identical. But that is another consideration for Indian women specifically to consider.
So the BMI that you're talking about, that's only for women, that they carry more fat compared to other ethnicities for Indian women, or even the men?
That's a really good question. Oh, wow. I'm in Google, and there's a BMI ethnicity calculator. So apparently it's gotten, I doubt it's just for women. Hang on. This is from a paper. Why are there race ethnic differences in adult body mass index and body fat relationships? They stay, it's just Hispanic and white. Let me see, let me turn up anything.
And again, you don't have to do it right now. If you think you can do it later, it's fine, completely fine.
Yeah, my gut says it's not specific to women. It's just that's sort of what we're specifically discussing. I'll find it and I'll email it to you when I try.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Too much time. But that is okay. So back to your question for women just starting. So far as beginners, I think it's very easy to overwhelm them with information. Now there are some that want that like the extremes, that are drawn to I want everything laid out. And realize that a lot of my writing does tend to be more detail oriented. even the women's book, it's not an easy book to read, make no mistake. And I get very, into a lot of these details. But, and that can work, but it can also backfire, right? A lot of women have usually learned, like, oh, I did this extreme diet and I lost so many kilos in 2 weeks and it all came back and I ended up a kilo heavier. If you've done that, don't do it again, right? I realize that it's less fun to take a longer time, but if that ultimately long-term adherence is better, long-term success. Like, yeah, if you've got a special event, if you've got a wedding or we do high school reunions, we have things of that nature, if that's all you care about, if you just like, I just want to go look good at, that's fine. But if your goal is long-term, frequently taking a more long-term approach, there's also the aspect that for beginners, generally speaking, you don't need the details. And I'm very much a believer under most circumstances of making the smallest changes that will have the largest effect. So just as an example, and again, this, I had a client years ago and he wanted to lose weight and he was drinking like 4 regular sodas per day. And that's like 800 calories of sugar water, or possibly even more than that. And I said, look, the only change I want you to make, just replace that with water or tea or diet soda, or just something non-caloric. He started losing roughly a kilo a week.
Wow.
And he did it. He didn't have to count. He didn't have to start measuring. He didn't have to start doing any of that stuff. If I can do that and get the results, I'd rather do that. And it's a lot of, again, this is something Sumi posts a lot about on her wall. She's very, and I'll be honest, habit-based stuff, not my strength. Like, am I aware of it? Sure. But I'm just kind of I was always an athlete. I coach athletes. Like, you can either do it or not. And if you're not going to, it's not my problem. Like, but that is not the best approach for the general public. And, so there's very much this idea that small habits or small changes over a long term can really be profound. Right. And if you make a 1% change in something, if you go 1%, that's nothing. Right. But if you do that every day for, or every week for a year, it's a 50% change. It's huge. It adds up so much. So in that, so I look for like the big red flags of what I think about the diet more so than the exercise is really causing the problems. Here, usually what I see, and again, women frequently don't eat enough protein, don't have a taste for protein. I know this is tying into one of your next questions because there's a huge cultural issue that needs to be addressed here. Is, they'll come and they'll go, look, I had, a piece of bread or a piece of toast or whatever it is, or bagel and some juice. And I would look at them and go, let me guess, at 10 a.m., you're starving and looking for candy. And they're just looking at me like, how do you know? And I'm just like, because I'm all knowing and all seeing. With clients, the sooner I can establish that, the fewer arguments we have down the road. I just want them to think that but it's just like, when you've seen the pattern enough times, you're like, and I go, look, just try to get some protein at breakfast. Like, I don't care what it is, whether it's throw a slice of cheese on your toast, piece of ham, like, again, this is very American stuff. And they would do that. And next they'd come like, oh my God, this is the first time I've ever made it to lunch and not been hungry. And I'm like, I am the all-knowing Lyle, listen to me. And like, again, part of my little shtick. So so I look for the big red flags. And if I can fix those and that be all I need to do. And frequently you do find that. Frequently you find there's a lot of diets out there that are like, oh, just don't do this or only do this, whether it's keto, paleo, whatever. And what you find is that it makes people automatically eat less. Now, I'm not opposed to that. I'm really not, right? If a diet can make you eat less without having to think about it, it's great, because knowing that you're dieting is terrible. It's mentally stressful. Like, even if you're not hungry, you're like, just knowing you can't eat whatever you want can be mentally stressful. And I have no problem with those types of approaches so long as they get enough protein, right? Like that's you'll hear me coming back to this a million times, because that really is the key. The problem is that a lot of those diets will say, oh, calories don't matter as long as you don't eat this food or do eat this food. And that's not true. Calories always matter. And what happens down the road is that folks following those diets start to plateau, for a number of reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and they're no longer losing. And I go, okay, you're going to have to start tracking your calories somehow. We go, no, calories don't matter. And those diets can be effective so long as you know how they're working.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you do find, lots of research has shown this, frequently increasing dietary protein by some amount causes people to eat less automatically. So if that one change will do the work and get the change that I want, and if I have to make other changes, that's fine. But if I can avoid making them until I have to, or if the person can avoid making them until they have to, because measuring food is a pain. Like all that tracking food is an absolute pain.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, it has to get done, right? At some point in everyone's journey, they're going to have to sit down and measure and weigh and get on MyFitnessPal or whatever it is. And it is one of the worst things you'll ever go through. Just, it's not in the sense that it's tedious and boring and not fun. Although even that, frequently when people write it all down, they become much more aware of what they're eating.
Mm-hmm.
There's a study ages ago that merely writing it down caused people to lose weight because they ate less. Because suddenly they were aware of that little bit of snacking they were doing through the day, made just by being more mindful.
Mm-hmm.
But it is horrible, it's awful, it's miserable, but nothing will teach you more about food intake than doing 2 weeks of writing it all down and measuring it and figuring out the calories. Because again, especially globally to some degree, and I can't speak to all countries, food portion sizes have been going up and up and up. In America, it's absurd. I'm sure you saw this when you were in the States, where you'd go to a restaurant and be like, that is a day's worth of food.
Yeah.
Right. When I went to the UK, for me, it was the opposite. I'm like, is this it? What do you mean? What do you mean? This is a third of what I'd get at an American restaurant. Because American restaurants serve literally 3 times more than you would eat at a meal, at any realistic meal.
Yep.
For cheap, or we have buffets or all that kind of insanity. So people have really lost touch with how many calories are in food. And whenever they do these, they have people, I want you to estimate what you ate. They're always off by anywhere from like 30 to 70%. It's just enormous. Wow. So at some point, you will have to do that. Mm-hmm. Put it off for as long as humanly possible. If you're making progress with small differences, I mean, for some people, it really is just as easy as, okay, I'm going to cut down whatever my normal dinner starch is, whether it's rice or pasta or bread. Like, I'm just going to reduce that serving size by 25%. Boom. If that gets it done, more power to you until it stops getting it done. Frequently for some people, it's just like, I'm just going to, or take my normal meal size and I'm just going to not clean my plates. Again, I know we get in all kinds of cultural and financial, and like, I know there's a lot, just giving as an example, frequently that alone is all that it takes, is to just consciously go, I'm going to eat a little bit less than normal, or I'm going to try to finish each meal. There's a Japanese word for it and I forget. The Japanese will say, eat till you're only 80% full. Because there's a delay between when we eat and when we really feel full. So if they stop consciously, like, okay, I'm full, but I'm not, I can't eat too much to move, which is how Americans approach eating. That's probably about right. Or if you're just a little bit hungry all day, you're probably about right. And I mean true biological hunger. I don't mean I'm bored because locked in the house because of COVID. Like, I mean, like, that's usually about right. So but at some point, again, you're going to have to do the measurements, and it will teach you more about your actual food intake than anything else. But put that out as long as you can. So that's how I would say approach dieting. If you can get your sufficient protein, and I should probably talk about numbers here as sort of ideals, because again, I know it leads into one of your next questions. Women do need less protein than men. This is another difference. So again, a lot of the protein recommendations you see, it's coming by men, for men, from men. And you'll see, values 2 to 3 grams per kilo or whatever, very, very, very high. For women, they can be a solid 25% less. They have less muscle. They use protein differently physiologically. So a good starting point, for sort of your average beginner female might be, what are recommended amounts in India? Like, are there like government guidelines for that?
Oh, the thing is that in that matter, India is a little backwards.
Okay.
So behind every packaged food, they would just approximate it according to a 2,000 calorie diet.
Okay, but like, do they recommend like a certain amount per, like over here, I think it was 0.8 grams per kilo.
Nothing is specific here. Nothing is
Okay.
specific. Yeah.
So yes, like in the US, that's been like the traditional sort of minimum.
Hmm.
Generally, you want to go higher than that for dieting. You know, I would probably say in the range of 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilo
Mm-hmm.
of lean body mass, right?
Okay.
Not total.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're 50 kilos. Now let's go a little bit. Say you're 60 kilos, that's 132 pounds, 20% body fat, right? That means you have 48 kilos of lean body mass, right? Just multiplied 60 times 80% times 0.8. Right. So at 1.2, that can't be right. 48, 1.2. No, I'm sorry. It's 1.2 to 1.5 grams per pound. Let's try that again. Let's say 2.4 grams per kilo. Yeah, let's try that again in non-metric. It's about 115 grams of protein.
Okay.
Now, when you tell many women that, they'll go, oh my God, that is so much protein. And again, like I said, I know that's your next question. If you're eating any amount of meat, I know, again, next question, but like that much of, say, chicken or fish, about the size of a deck of cards, about 3 to 4 ounces, and I don't know how many grams that is off the top of my head. That's about 30 grams of protein. So if you're doing that multiple times per day, and it doesn't have to come from animal proteins, vegetable proteins, dairy, things of that nature, to get that amount is generally not as difficult as women think. Like I said, men usually less of an issue. Again, I know within cultural stuff. So like that, you know, that would be a good range. As women, as you get much leaner, you may need more protein. You could even go, okay, hang on. I'm sorry, I'm mixing metric and US levels. 1 point, you know, usually the lowest I've seen for dieting would be 1.5 grams per kilo. So, you know, which is about 80 to 90 grams per protein. So we're not looking at humongous differences, you know. Even for, I think for women, if they like track, they'll probably find that they're not getting, you know, 30, 40, maybe 50 grams of protein. If you can find a way to double that, you're fine. You know, we're not dealing, if you were trying to get 12% body fat, different. If you're carrying lots of extra body fat, you don't need as much. You may choose to eat more because, again, it controls appetite and blood sugar, but you don't physically need as more. So, you know, 90, 100, 110 grams, that's probably it's going to be an improvement. And you will see this if they take folks and they're like, all right, we took them from 15% protein, which is the daily recommended amount. We doubled that, which is, you know, 45, 50 grams to 90 to 100. Boom. Ate a couple hundred calories less, lost fat over some portion of time. Like that alone, dietarily, will get most of it done. So far as exercise, really the best piece of advice I can give is start slow. Also realize that as much as we talk about exercise, as much as we fixate on it, my degree is in exercise physiology. The reality is that exercise has a depressingly minimal effect on weight loss, predominantly because beginners can't do that much of it. And it's just a numerical reality, right? If you do 30 minutes of moderate aerobic activity and you're relatively smaller, you might burn 150 to 200 calories if you're lucky, more like 150 times 7 days a week. Like that's not even half a kilo a month.
Yeah.
Sure, if you can do an hour of hard aerobic activity 6 days a week, absolutely, because you may be burning 500. Beginners, well, they probably can do it for a couple of weeks till they get hurt and quit, but they shouldn't. So there's that reality. Now, it doesn't mean it's not beneficial. Many find that when they start an exercise program, they're psychologically more likely to be to stick to their eating habits, and they often go hand in hand. Resistance training resistance training burns a depressingly few number of calories, unless you do a ton of it. If you're in the weight room for 2 hours going, you can burn a lot. The basic beginner weight routine that may take 20 or 30 minutes, where that really benefits has to do with the composition of what's lost. Like I said, in an ideal world, we would lose 100% fat. Women are actually, they have an advantage there. Women lose a greater proportion of the weight as fat as men do. And for reasons I truly don't want to get into, it's way technical math. That is one of the reasons women lose fat more slowly. Like, you will lose weight faster if you lose more muscle, but this sets you up for a disaster down the road. So because of all these other reasons and being smaller, women lose more slowly, but also the advantage is they're losing nearly 100% fat. If you even do the most minimum weight training, I mean, twice a week for 20 or 30 minutes, one set per muscle group where you're challenging yourself, you should get zero muscle loss, which means everything. So it can help with composition. Also, if you gain a couple, 3 pounds, which is, or kilo and a half, it will change your appearance to a much greater degree. And to a very real degree, really all cardio aerobic activity does is burn calories, genuinely. Studies have shown that if you just create a deficit and weight train, you get the same results. As now, if you want to do cardio, I'm not saying don't. If you want to, it allows you to eat a little bit more. There could be reasons to do it, but don't expect it to at least not initially. Now, that isn't to say that over time it can't have a role, right? My point being, just early on, right? If you can burn 150 calories with aerobic activity, you can take 250 calories out of your diet like that. Diet is just a much bigger, a much easier path to go down. Now, 6 months from now, if you focus on getting fitter, progressing aerobic activity, just like we progressed resistance training, you'll be able to burn more calories over time. And there is a study that I cited in the women's book a bunch of years ago to beginner women and men, overweight, and they started them burning 100 calories a day, 6 days a week. Now, what was interesting here, this goes to other differences, because the women were smaller, they had to exercise something like 25% longer, because women burn fewer calories per minute because they're littler. So again, if you see if a guy goes, do 30 minutes of cardio 6 days a week, well, women might have to do 40 to 45 to match that. Anyway, so they burn, but over 6 months, they built them up to 600 calories a day, 6 days a week. But that's a pretty long period of time. As they got fitter, they just pushed them a little bit harder, duration, intensity. So by the 6 month mark, they were now burning nearly a pound, the equivalent of a pound of fat a week. But it took time to get there. The key is that when you do it that way, you don't ever feel overwhelmed, right? When I trained beginners, my goal was to have them never feel like they couldn't achieve the goal, right? We started very, very light. I would take them when they could do 12 repetitions easily. I would add a little bit of weight, bring them back to 8. You can get away with that for a really long time. And over time, I would push them a little bit harder. Right, so they would get to 11, and I think, you got one more, and they get one more. But they never walked out of the gym exhausted. They never, you hear these stories like, my trainer put me through a leg workout. I couldn't walk for 2 days. That's not effective. My goal as a trainer or as a coach is not to destroy you. It's to make you better, right? I do. Now, some people, they want that. If I don't come out of a workout, and fall down, no, the goal is not to be exhausted. The goal is to make progress. But you start slow and build up over time, so that, and by 12 weeks later with my beginner clients, they would be working harder than they ever thought possible. But I did it so slowly, they never really, as opposed to some that would go to a trainer, put them through 20 sets for chassis, a typical bodybuilder workout. Be like, I couldn't lift my arms for a week. I quit. I never want to see that. So start slowly. Realize that diet will play the bigger role, and realize that even if you're not doing a tremendous amount now, just add to it. Focus on what you did accomplish, add a few minutes if you start on, I had very unfit, very overweight clients years ago that literally 5 minutes on the treadmill was it. Well, we did 5, so I had them do 5 minutes. We did a few weight exercises. I had them do 5 minutes. You're done. Well, 10 minutes is better than 0. And 2 days later, they'd come back and be like, okay, let's do 7 and 7. 9. And so by the end of the first week, they're doing 10 and 10. Like, wow, I'm doing 20 minutes. It's not continuous. Don't care. They're getting it. They're doing it. They're accomplishing it. They're achieving it. And that to me is the key, is they have to come out of the workout feeling like they've succeeded, like they've accomplished something, but that over time they are improving. And that's also where I see weight training has a much, much bigger role. With aerobic exercise, it can take 6 weeks to really feel the change. It's about that long to get that first big, big adaptation. With weight training, and again, this is a trick. I didn't care, whatever worked. I would start them super duper light on exercises they could very easily do. I didn't teach squats to beginners. I didn't teach deadlifts to beginner. If I got to put them on a machine so they can feel like, I don't want them to feel embarrassed, self-conscious, ever. And I'd start them so super light. And at the second workout, they'd feel stronger. No, not because it's because their brain is learning to lift the weights. There's a bunch of stuff going on. Or if I had them do like a dumbbell bench press, it was a little bit wobbly, and I would guide them through it. And the second workout, it would feel better, feel more stable, feel like, and they'd be like, wow, the improvements, the feeling of achievement are so much faster with weight training. And this is why I'm a big believer in ideally starting with both. There's an old idea, like it's like, oh, just do cardio first or lose weight before you go to the weight room. Or there's also the old, I'm going to get in shape before I go join a gym. No. That's backwards. Like I want to start people on, now again, I'm not doing an exhausting amount. My beginner weight training workout was 4 exercises, 1 for legs, 1 for chest, 1 for back, and then like an ab exercise. Took about 10 minutes. It was plenty for someone completely untrained. So, we did 5 minutes of aerobic activity to warm up, 10 minutes of weight training, 5 minutes or whatever they could do at the end. Great. You just did a 20-minute workout and you walked out of here feeling better than you walked in. Next time, we'll do a little bit more. But again, it's that 1% thing. I would rather increase by 1% per workout. And over 12 weeks, suddenly they've increased 35% more than they ever thought they could do. So start slow. Consistency beats out intensity every single time. Something else I would add, because this is something I see a lot of beginners do. And it's true of diet as well. So this is more of a general concept. Life happens and life gets in the way, right? There are always backslides. There are always mistakes. And I hate to use those terms, but you know what I mean. You started your diet plan, you started your exercise plan, whatever. Something gets in the way. You have a family emergency, whatever, and you miss a workout. And people will think, oh man, I've been doing this for 3 weeks. I missed a workout. I've lost it. I might as well not even, I quit. I might as well not even go back. That's very self-defeating. Even in the beginner stage, you lose almost nothing. But even if you did, you gain it back twice as quickly as you gained in the first place. So actually, there's an insane study they did a couple of years ago. They took beginners. They had one group train every week for however long it was, 24. The other group trained for 3 weeks and then took like 2 weeks off and then trained for 3 weeks and something like that. And what they saw was that the group that took the time off would gain a little bit faster when they came back. And they both ended up at the exact same spot. Now, I'm not saying to take 2 weeks off every 3 weeks. There is a consistency aspect of this. But if you miss a workout, don't worry about it. Do it tomorrow. Do it in a day. Or just move on. When I've been training Sumi, every once in a while, she'll have a bad workout. We'll have to miss. It's very rare. And she'll be like, do we make up for the last one? No. It's gone. That's in the past. We're done with that. We just continue. Same thing with diet. Things will happen. Family events, especially, U.S. holiday. Christmas time in the U.S. is a nightmare. We've got all these holidays stacked up. And there is a cultural aspect. If you get invited to a group event or a family dinner party, and realize I'm actually half Middle Eastern, so I can't understand. This sounds horribly racist. It's not meant to be, but there is not meant to be. People from more of an ethnic background, and I am contrasting that to sort of just general American. There is a family structure that encompasses everything. Middle Eastern, when we have family dinners, My grandma would cook 10 times more food than necessary. That's a totally cultural thing. What's an ethnic thing? You hear that from like almost all ethnic groups. Your aunties just tell you to eat, have some more. Let me get you more food. Like, so like, you know exactly what I'm talking, because I'm sure it's similar enough, right? So if you get invited to, if like, I'm dieting and you get invited to that, you're not going to go there and tell your family, because it's very disrespectful. It's very insulting. Like, I'm not saying eat everything in the world, but when those things happen, or you may just have a bad day. We're in a very high stress world right now. Everything seems awful. You're going to have bad days. Now, you can let that completely derail you, or you can adjust slightly the next day if you want, or you can ignore it, because in the big picture, one day doesn't mean anything.
True.
Right? I've even seen people like, they've dieted for 12 weeks. They've lost whatever it is, say it's 5 kilos, and something comes up. They gain a kilo back, and they're like, I wasted all that time. Like, no, I think it's human nature. We focus on what we did wrong versus what we did right. That seems to be a common theme for humans in a lot of aspects. And it's like, look, you lost 5 kilos. Yeah, you gained 1 back. So you've already shown that you can do this because you did it. Do it again, because it'll take you no time at all to lose that kilo and get back to progressing. So it's very easy to lose sight of the big picture in that regards, and let these short, like I said, I'll call them mistakes or whatever, disruptions, in drug addiction, they call it the abstinence violation effect when drug users or alcohol users, they fall off the wagon. And what their research has really clearly shown is how they respond to that determines very much what happens. If they see it as a personal failing, as I'm weak, I suck, they tend to relapse. But if they see it as what can I learn from this? What environmental situation, what occurred? What can I learn so that next time I can be ready? They are the ones that succeed long term. It's the same thing here.
Great. You focused a lot on psychological aspects right now. So maybe making sure that you're winning a workout when you go inside and not coming out as losing one. That also makes a big difference.
Right. And even in that sense, like, people have good days and bad days. And something I don't want to get some women across their menstrual cycle may find that their performance and their energy levels change. Not all of them. There's much more variability here in women than men in that regards. Some women, there's no change. Some women are up and down and up and down. So if you go in and you just feel terrible, right? Didn't sleep well, just whatever, and you can't do the exact same amount you did the last week. It's very easy. Lost all my gains. I suck. I'm weak. I couldn't do this. Women frequently are just like, I got to power through this. And male coaches are frequently power through this. I did that when I was younger. I feel almost embarrassed about it now. Trainee, and 1 week out of the month, she couldn't lift. I'd be like, what's your problem? Lift the weight. She's like, I can't. I'm like, you can't. And I look back at that and go, ugh. Awful. I was part of the problem. Anyway, so like, don't focus on, I had a bad workout. Focus on, hey, I did my workout. I went. The fact that you went, there's an old quote to the effect of, the most important part of success is showing up. The fact that you actually went when maybe you didn't feel, or if you go and you feel terrible. I mean, truly, and some women are really, really hit hard by a lot of this. You don't have to do your full workout. Do a little bit of it. Do 15 minutes is better than 30 minutes. 30 minutes is still better, 15 minutes is better than 0, even if it's not 30. Go do some frequently. If you come out of there feeling better than you went in, great. But just be aware that can also very much happen, more so in women than men. Again, those short-term things don't really matter in the big picture. Miss a week, cool, get right back into it. You'll get right back to where you were within 2 workouts. Takes no time at all. Miss one work, whatever, go train tomorrow. It's all good. If you have a bad workout, put it behind you, and it'll be better the next time. There's something else I've told Sumi. Every once in a while, she'll have just one of those things. And we do a particularly hard workout on Saturdays. And 1 week, it'll just not go well because it's a very maximal workout. And I'll just go, look, here's what your records. every time this happens, the next week you have a fantastic workout. And every time I've told her that, it happens. And maybe I'm programming her for it. Maybe I don't care. But it's still even hard for her 3 years down the road to go, look, this is just one workout. And invariably, that bad workout, a few days later, you come back in, you're rested, you feel better, and you kill it. So, another thing you see online is, everybody thinks progress is like this, and it's not. It's same thing with weight loss. People will lose, and they may sort of stall, and they may go up a little bit. And women, obviously, they have weight changes during their monthly cycle that can occur, But as long as it's coming down gradually, your body weight and your body fat, great. As long as over time, your performance in the weight room, your aerobic fitness is going up, cool. What's happening in the short term doesn't really matter.
Awesome. So I had a few more questions, but now that I see you answered all of them in your, and just one important question that was left about the cultural differences here.
Yeah.
So first of all, as the protein recommendations you gave, let me tell you, the women recommendations for the women, those are not even eaten by men here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And women are completely out of question when it comes to
that's something I've discussed with Sumi a lot, because I know it's something she with clients, and I know that a lot of that is because culturally, I know vegetarianism is it's part of religion as much as just sort of cultural stuff. Here it tends to be a little bit more of a niche, and I think the question you had, will that prevent people from losing fat? And the answer is no, but it certainly can make it more difficult. Excuse me.
So if I may, I'll just give you a brief example of what different kind of beliefs people have here, so that you have an understanding about it. So number one is, of course, vegetarians. Nowadays we have vegans as well. We also have a particular community known as the Jain community, which is Jainism. That's a different religion, and they do not eat anything that's grown underground. So no onions, no carrots.
Oh, interesting.
No tubers, nothing. And meat, of course, never. They would never eat meat. They would never eat tubers. Nothing that's like a root vegetable or fruit, something like that. They would never eat like that.
Just because I'm curious, why? What's the basis of that belief?
So because I am half Jain, my mom was Jain, so I know about this. So they believe that when you pull out a plant from the roots, it's completely dead. So you're killing it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So they also face a lot of issues with the vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies. The protein is far away. I mean, that's a long question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
can it be done, right? There are a number of studies, people in the US who are sort of that, I hate to say ideology, but it can become very ideological. Because make no mistake, it's, here, when you say, oh, look, it's important to eat, humans, we kind of evolved, like we had animal products, we had vegetable products. And I'm of the belief that, you find that there's nutrients in both that we need. And one of the, here we've got the carnivore diet, which is the most ridiculous, the all you eat is meat approach, and so American, just such an American.
I interviewed Dr. Sean Baker as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm, but when you say that, when you tell people like, oh, it's important that you should get some, they'll go, well, why would I eat 80% meat? Like, that's not what I said, right? If you look at most athletic diets, lots of lean proteins, some starches, lots of, like, I would never say not to eat fruits and vegetables, like ever. I'm not anti-grain, I'm not anti-carbohydrate, but it becomes a balance issue. And depending on the extremity of the vegetarianism, because at least over here, we sort of define different types, right? You've got sort of, vegan is just no animal products whatsoever. That includes all animal products, eggs, milk, meat, fowl, fish, honey, although some have like everything. That's really the most extreme. With vegetarianism over here, some just don't eat red meat, but will allow chicken and fish, eggs, milk. Yeah, and that's, you get into some of this, it's a lot of semantic nitpicking.
Yeah, people who eat just fish and nothing else, a pescatarian or something like that, I guess. That's what they
Right,
call
and
it.
there's pescatarians that will
Yeah.
eat fish. You've got what are called
Mm.
lacto-ovo vegetarians,
Correct.
which will not eat any animal flesh,
Mm.
but will allow dairy and
Dairy and
eggs.
eggs. Mm.
And I mean, I got into an argument with somebody one time, and they were like, only red meat is meat. No, if it had eyes, it's meat. But it's semantic game playing to me. It's just like, no, I think that's a really ridiculous distinction, but whatever. So, and I don't know how extreme, the vegetarianism is over there. Does it allow any sort of animal products, whether it's
Yeah,
eggs,
yeah, for
dairy,
sure.
fish,
So
right?
milk products, yes, but
Okay.
nothing, no eggs, no meat, nothing like that, nothing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, yes, that will make it more difficult. The big problem being that most vegetable source proteins tend to have a lot of carbohydrates
Yes.
associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
So to get the kind of protein numbers I'm talking about, invariably takes calories too high. That tends to be really, is there just aren't, even, if you look at Asian cultures, even by the time you add, like, tofu is at least somewhat as of a concentrated protein food. It's still got some tag along fats, but not as bad. To try to get the kind of protein numbers I'm talking about from, say, rices and beans or legumes, things of that nature, becomes very, very difficult. So it certainly doesn't make it any easier. And I doubt, my gut says that, over here, a lot of the really militant vegans are like, I'm a vegan strength athlete. I'm like, and how much protein powder do you use per day? Because I guarantee you're not getting enough protein from beans. And the answer is usually a lot. So I don't know if protein powders, those types of things are really a cultural thing.
Yes, now they are. So as you said, some American things have translated here for sure, except for McDonald's only. So
well, yeah, I'm sure as I think about it, they're probably not going to be tremendously successful in a country that's predominantly vegetarian. Oh, wait, they have?
Oh my gosh, it runs really well here, and they have modified their menu according to Indian stuff. So
that was gonna be my next dumb question. Is like, what do they sell? Do they just have like veggie burgers
and
and
vegetarian stuff? They have chicken burgers.
Wow.
They don't have any beef because beef is banned in India right now. And they have, I think they have a pork burger. But lot of vegetarian options, lots of them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yay capitalism. But like I said, America, we will ruin the rest of the world if it's the last thing that we do. There's that famous picture, the first McDonald's that opened in Russia, and the line was, around the block. Like, that's hooray for my country. So yeah, it's like, at least protein powder is concentrated. So that's one way to go about it.
Okay.
Dairy foods, you can only dairy can get tiresome, but that is at least more concentrated. Over here, of course, we have all kinds of low-fat and fat-free dairy, and I don't know if that's particularly available.
Not so much.
And it's, again, my protein recommendations tend to be, I tend to err more on the side of too much than too little. But we do get into and again, this is something that, like I said, somebody needs to write a book about this. It's not going to be me, because the women's book almost broke me. And the idea of looking into all these ethnic differences just sounds it's just overwhelming to me right now. Yeah. Even as desperately as we need it. So, if the 1.5 grams per kilo, like, I don't know how, so you're looking at, 50, 60 kilo woman, 90 grams of protein. I don't know if that's, because the grain proteins do count, right? So that's at least a proportion of it. If you can even find one or two concentrated sources of protein, whether it's, a scoop of protein powder, usually about 30 grams, would be, are there, so like, again, I know in Japan and Asian cultures, they have tofu. Are there any sorts of concentrated proteins, like whether it's soy, I don't know, soy-based, I don't know what food stuff would be based around?
So I don't know if Sumi has ever told you about this, but there's something called paneer, which is farmer's cheese.
Okay.
So they have farmer's cheese cubes that we make into a curry, and we eat it.
Oh, how interesting. Okay, yeah. So something like that would certainly be a way to at least go about increasing protein intake. And if you're adding what is generally a higher quality protein, to, what are like vegetable and bean sources, not as high quality, there's a whole thing with food combining and all that stuff, will tend to improve the overall quality of it. So even doing that to bump up protein intake would be a big first step. But like I said, that is tough because now here, usually when I run into it, it's more of a personal, either ethical thing or a taste thing. Women frequently just don't have the taste. Like I said, men love red meat. It's a biological thing. Men tend to crave protein and fat, and women tend to crave carbs and fat as a generality. So I run it. So it's often a hard push for those reasons. But now we're introducing a factor that it is part of, a countrywide religion. It's part of it's beyond personal choice, because in the US we're spoiled enough to make all kinds of idiotic dietary choices, and people do it all the time. Whereas in other it is often such a deep-seated part of the culture. You can't just say, oh, go against everything you've ever been taught and everything everyone in your country believes. It doesn't really work out that well. Although I'd be interested to know, lately there have been a fair number of professional Indian bodybuilders. And realistically, of course, this is because steroids are legal and they're easy to get. Lately there's been sort of a burst of pro bodybuilders from countries that have not been traditionally known for that sport. Thailand is another one, and it's because steroids are legal and easy to get. And but I would be really curious, because bodybuilders always emphasize so much protein, what they eat if they simply ignore their cultural religious upbringing and eat all the animal products. Or I really just now I would wonder or they just live on protein powder, I guess.
Okay, so first of all, you're right that there have been there's an array of bodybuilders that have come out from India these days. And I'm not saying there are no vegetarians in that population. There are.
Got it.
The majority come from religions that already eat meat.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. So
that
they
makes
have
perfect sense.
Chicken, mutton, fish, protein powders, eggs, everything.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Well, and that makes perfect logical sense. I mean, okay. Like I said, that's why, I mean, early on I said, I realized that India is a tremendous, huge country, and it's not like there is a single cultural or religious upbringing any more than in most countries. So, all right, well, no, that, again, today I learned something. So a lot of it I think will just be sort of doing, even if you can't hit those ideal numbers, any increase will be an improvement. Certainly over what sounds like traditionally. Do you know what average protein intakes are among either Indian women or men?
Yes, I have calculated in my clients, and I've asked around a few people. And say example, if it's a 60-kilo lady, I'm not trying to generalize, but just from what data I have collected anecdotally, I think they would consume 40 grams or 50 grams a day maximum.
Yeah.
That's all.
Which is about, that's sort of the recommended. So let's see, what is it?
And that too is on a rare, a good day. So.
Right. Grams per. Whoops. Yeah, I mean that's about what our sort of our I think our government recommendation is about 0.8 grams per kilo. 60 kilos, 48 grams. So certainly in that range. If you could even get that up, I think 25%, even to 75 to 80 would probably be a big difference. What do you do? I mean, how do you, obviously, I mean, you've got firsthand experience. What recommendations do you make?
I just ask them to say example. So a typical Indian diet has one flat bread made of grains. One bowl of lentil soup, which has some protein.
Sure.
And then one curry. That's a typical thing. So I just ask them to maybe increase the amount of lentil soup and reduce the grain source so that it sort of balances out. It's a little tough, for sure. It's a little tough. Sure. And I have a lot of vegetarian clients. So I face that. Some of them have plant protein powders, which is the best way you said.
Yes.
And some of them have whey protein as well, especially the males.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that basically sounds like in a practical sense.
Yes.
Just that's what, you do what you have to do within
Exactly
what you have to work with.
Yeah.
But even that one thing, just, increasing the lentils by 25% and reducing the grains and rice or the starch
Yes.
by that same amount will pretty, at least be a start. And then if you can add, a scoop of protein powder to a day, because even that, you add that 30 grams, a single scoop of protein powder to an average of, 40 to 50 grams, you're at least up in the 70. Like, even that is a huge step forward. So.
And since you brought the topic of protein powders, just a couple of weeks ago, a huge racket was busted in northern India where they were just selling carbohydrate powder and labeling it as a internationally imported whey protein, and they were also adding anabolic steroid powders to it.
Oh, fantastic! That's
I
awesome.
think the entire racket was about $400,000 approximately.
Wow.
So people don't even trust powders here too much.
Well, which I can believe, and this is something, and again, this can come across. When you look, pharmaceuticals from India are frequently half of what you will see elsewhere in the world, but apparently an enormous amount of them are counterfeited. And they just aren't real. And that's it can be real hit or miss depending on what company you pick. So, and the supplement industry has been prone to that for years. Over here a few years ago, there was something called amino spiking.
Okay.
And because when you do I'm sure you're probably familiar with this, when they do quality assays on protein powder, they're looking for specific. So what they would do is take a very inexpensive protein powder and they would just put larger amounts of these specific amino acids, which are also so that on a chemical assay, it would be like, oh wow, this is a super high quality. It's got super high amounts of this amino acid, but they were based because there's so much money to be made. So I'm not surprised. How did they find this out?
I don't know. They got tipped by some person, and they just rated it.
Someone in the company. So that, and I don't know what the solution to that is. I imagine. American supplement companies, American companies know where money to be made is, and I think if they see that there is a cultural shift in a country of 1 billion people to the demand for protein, they'll find a way. They'll figure out a way for the major brands to probably get to get into the country. But I can see why that would cause some distrust. That's amazing. Because I have trouble imagining. Well, honestly, it's probably cheaper to synthesize the steroids than to get quality protein powder.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Phenomenal. That's just phenomenal.
So again, I'm not generalizing. I'm sure there are a lot of shops here that sell genuine stuff, but because of a small bunch, of course, people don't trust them. So it's like that.
No, and understandably not, because not only are you spending what I suspect is probably relatively proportionally more money for a non-product, you're being given something that you didn't consent to taking. Giving someone anabolic steroids without their knowledge. Not that it's necessarily dangerous, unsafe, but that's just not right. So I can absolutely understand that. I don't know if this could ever exist, but here we honestly have companies that all they do is quality testing. If there could be some sort of quality seal of approval where a given company's products are tested and stamped with it to say, this is what legitimate, I bet that would at least some sort of potential to guide people. Because there's a ton of money to be made, and carbohydrate powder is cheap. There's a great movie, if you haven't seen it, it's called Bigger, Stronger, Faster. It's a documentary about 15 years ago. And the guy's like, this bottle, which sells for whatever, $39.95 US a month, costs us about $3 to make. Or what it might not have been that extreme, but the markup on these product is so ridiculous that all people have to do is set up a company. Really what costs them the most money is the advertising, is get people to buy it for a year, and then they can retire because they've made, they've made their $400,000 or $500,000, and that's all they can get out of it. So it's, there's such an absurd amount of money to be made, which is unfortunate because it means fleecing the gullible. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like in a practical sense, you've figured out the best compromise, and that's true of everything. Like I said, there's so much context to this.
True.
We can talk in ideals, we can talk in theoretical, on paper perfection, and then there's the real world. There's the real world of life. Again, if you've got a professional athlete who's got resources and access to everything, it's different. But in the real world, we have to work around those realities, and this is a big one. But it sounds like you've kind of, because again, like we're just saying, it's sort of a typical meal with lentil soup and a curry and bread. If you were to make that shift at 2 meals a day and bump protein, and then add a decent protein powder, right there, you've doubled their protein intake. And that alone, enormous first step.
Well, awesome. Lyle, this was a great podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time and
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And there are a lot of people who are looking forward to this conversation, because a few people on Facebook as well told me to upload it there.
Okay.
I'm sure Instagram's going to be there maybe tomorrow, day after. I'm going to edit it a little bit.
Sure.
Because IGTV only allows me a 1-hour video, so I have to cut it into 1 and 1.
Very good.
But I hope to do another podcast with you on different topics, because your knowledge is phenomenal, and everybody is aware of that.
Absolutely. And I would definitely, I think I know you said this, definitely have Sumi on, because she will have, I think, not only more perspective culturally and ethnically, but one of the things she deals with is the wrong word, but has a lot of experience with, that I think is very much an issue. A big thing for her is sort of mommy fitness, or moms in general, mothers tend to be tasked with a lot more things, child raising, paying attention to the house, cooking, etc., which can leave them with very little time. And that's something Sumi is very passionate about, is finding 20 to 30 minutes to do even the most basic of exercise routines. And she's written her own book about it. She did it herself when she was pregnant and after she had her daughter. So that's something I think she can really speak to in a very practical sense, is what busy mothers or homemakers or what have you can do to work through this. So definitely have her on.
Yeah, awesome.
Good.
Yes, thanks a lot. You have a great day.
You
And
too.
I'll stay in touch with you via email.
Fantastic.